English One-on-One. In this video, we will be talking about reducing adverb clauses. Adverb clauses, like adjective clauses, can often be reduced to phrases. Once again, before you reduce a clause, you have to ask yourself if that clause can be reduced. Now, in the adverb clauses, you have to look at the subjects in both clauses, in the IC and DC. If the subject in both clauses is the same, the adverb clause can be reduced. For example, before I came to the United States, I didn't speak English very often. The subject I in the DC is the same as the subject I in the IC. Therefore, this clause can be reduced. Now, the first way to reduce a clause is eliminate the subordinator, adverb subordinator, eliminate the subject in the dependent clause, and change the verb by adding an ing to the infinitive of the verb. Our verb is came, which is past tense of the verb come. Therefore, you add ing to the verb come. And you have coming to the United States. Now, you can leave subordinator before with the reduced clause. Before coming to the United States, I did not speak English very often. Now, when you're working with time clauses, usually you keep the subordinator. You can leave it or keep it. When you work with cause and effect adverb subordinators, you have to delete the cause and effect subordinator. Let's look at this example. Because Mary needed some cash, she wanted to find an ATM machine. This clause can be reduced because the subject Mary is the same as the subject she. Therefore, you're going to get rid of because, you're going to delete the subordinator, and you're going to add ing to the verb need. And here you have, needing some cash, Mary wanted to find an ATM machine. With time clauses, you can leave it or keep it. Let's look at another example where we have the verb can or could in the DC. Because he could not afford a new car, Anthony bought a used car. Now, what's going to happen with the verb could? Again, this clause can be reduced because he and Anthony is the same subject. We're going to eliminate because, and now we're going to have to add ing to the infinitive of the verb could. Now, could is past tense of can, but the infinitive of can is be able to. So you're going to add ing to the verb be, and you have being unable to afford a new car. Or you can get rid of the verb to be and just use the adjective unable and just say, unable to afford a new car, Anthony bought a used car. Every time you're dealing with the verb can or could, you have to keep in mind the infinitive of this verb is be able to. The second way to reduce an adverb clause is when you have the verb to be in the clause is the same like in adjective clauses. You eliminate the subordinator and the subject, and you eliminate the verb to be, and you keep the rest. And you have unable to afford a new car. And like I previously said in the previous slide, you can also add ing to the verb to be and have being unable to afford a new car, Anthony bought a used car. Now, what happens when the subordinator cannot be reduced? That means the subjects in the IC and DC are different. For example, because the weather was so nice, the teacher brought her class outside. This clause cannot be reduced because the subject in the DC is the weather and the subject in the IC is the teacher. Two different subjects, therefore no change. Now again, we're going back to the same two mistakes that can happen when you reduce dependent clauses. The first one is a dangling modifier. It's when a modifier incorrectly reduced. For example, while learning how to ride a bike, my knees got skinned up quite a bit. In this sentence, the adverb clause is reduced and it's placed next to the subject, my niece. Therefore, that means that my niece were learning how to ride a bike. So remember, in order to reduce the adverb clause, the subjects have to be the same. So if the subject in the IC is my niece, therefore, it's the same subject in the DC. Therefore, my niece were learning how to ride a bike, which is, of course, funny and it's incorrect. Therefore, it's reduced incorrectly, and there are two ways to fix this. Now, you can add the correct subject in the DC and say, while I was learning how to ride a bike, my niece got skinned up a bit. Or you say, you change the subject in the IC instead of my niece, you say I. While learning how to ride a bike, I got my niece skinned up a bit. In this case, you have subject I here because I was learning, and subject I in this clause. I got my niece skinned up a bit. Here's another example of dangling modifiers. Having finished grading the final exam, grades were posted on the bulletin board. Now, most of the time, these modifiers, when they're incorrectly reduced, sound fine, because we obviously understand that somebody graded the final exam. But when we talk, we don't think about the rules. And so when we say a sentence like this, it sounds fine to us, but not in writing. So now you look at this sentence and you understand that in this sentence, the subject is grades. Grades is the subject in this IC. Therefore, grades should be the subject in the reduced dependent clause. Therefore, the grades graded the final exam. And you know this is incorrect. So again, there are two ways to fix that. And it's all about the subject. You have to coordinate the subject. So you either change the word, the subject grades, and say the professor or whoever graded the quizzes. And you say, having finished grading the final exam, the professor posted grades on the bulletin board. And this sentence is correct because the professor posted the grades and the professor finished grading here. Or you add the correct subject in the dependent clause and now you don't reduce it. After the professor finished grading the final exam, grades were posted on the bulletin board. Let's look at one more example. Removing the tag from the pillowcase seemed to fit better. Obviously, somebody removed the tag and now the pillowcase seemed to fit better. But again, in writing, it's incorrect grammatically because in the IC, the subject is pillowcase. Therefore, the pillowcase removed the tag from the pillow, which is again incorrect, and it's a funny mistake. And so again, probably there's only one way to fix the sentence is to add the subject, either I or we or he or she or whoever. After I removed the tag from the pillowcase seemed to fit better. It doesn't matter what subject you add as long as it's not the pillowcase, as long as it's a person, whoever removed the tag from the pillow. The second mistake is misplaced modifiers. Now remember, a misplaced modifier is a modifier, a word or phrasal clause, that is improperly separated from the word. In other words, it describes the wrong noun. Let's look at this example. John sent the package to the wrong house, making a mistake in the address. Again, we understand that obviously it was John who made a mistake, but this reduced clause is misplaced. It's placed right after the word house, therefore it was the house that made a mistake, not John. So in order to fix this mistake, you simply take this modifier and you remove it next to John. And you can say, making a mistake in the address, John sent the package to the wrong house. Or you can say, John, comma, making a mistake in the address, comma, sent the package to the wrong address. Now, originally, the sentence probably looked like this. John sent the package to the wrong house because he made a mistake in the address. Obviously, this sentence, this clause, can be reduced because he and John is the same subject, And so you remove the subordinated because, you remove subject he, and you add ing to the infinitive of the verb made. And so you have making a mistake in the address. But it has to belong to John, not the house. Another example of misplaced modifiers is, I finished the game nearly exhausted. Obviously, you understand that you were exhausted when you finished the game, but again, the modifier is misplaced because it describes the game, not the subject I. Again, it has to be moved next to the subject. Nearly exhausted, I finished the game. Or you can say I, comma, nearly exhausted, comma, finished the game. After studying all night, the test wasn't so difficult for John. Again, according to the sentence, the test studied all night. But obviously it wasn't the test, it was John, and therefore it's a misplaced modifier that has to come here and modify John. The test was not difficult for John after studying all night.